All right, picture this. It's July 2nd, 1776. While the Founding Fathers are busy drafting the Declaration of Independence, there's another historic event happening in a small but feisty colony, New Jersey. The state is about to drop a bombshell by becoming one of the first to create its own constitution, months before independence is officially declared. But this isn't just any constitution. New Jersey's bold moves would lay the groundwork for ideas about equality, suffrage, and self-government. To get the full picture, let's step back a bit and look at the landscape. It's 1776, and the American colonies are pretty much on fire with revolutionary ideas. Across the 13 colonies, people are fed up with British control, and protests are breaking out over taxation, lack of representation, and just plain old unfair treatment. By this point, most colonies are ready to break ties with the British Crown. New Jersey's situation is particularly unique. It's sandwiched between two major hotbeds of revolutionary activity, New York and Philadelphia. The colony's strategic location means it's constantly caught up in the chaos of the war, with British troops nearby and local militias on high alert. But more than just geography, New Jersey's leaders are feeling the heat to act. They're sensing that independence might actually happen, and they need a game plan if it does. Meanwhile, the Continental Congress is pushing colonies to start forming their own governments. So, while the fight for independence is ramping up, New Jersey's leaders decide to get ahead of the game. They're going to draft a state constitution that declares their autonomy and lays out a vision for governance. Alright, so here's where the story gets wild. It's early June 1776, and New Jersey's Provincial Congress is meeting in Burlington. They're gearing up to draft the colony's first constitution, but with a ticking clock. Why? Because they've got British forces lurking nearby, and the Continental Congress in Philadelphia is pushing for action. In just a few short weeks, these delegates need to whip up a document that can hold its own against the British monarchy's authority. They draft the New Jersey Constitution in record time. And here's what makes it revolutionary. It grants voting rights to any inhabitants who meet certain property requirements, regardless of gender or race. Yeah, you heard that right. At a time when women and people of color are widely excluded from political power, New Jersey takes a bold step by technically allowing them a voice in governance. It's a move that's years, even centuries ahead of its time. But that's not all. This constitution also sets up a system of checks and balances, dividing power between an elected assembly and an executive leader. In a way, it's a testing ground for what would later be the U.S. Constitution. And all of this is happening before the ink is even dry on the Declaration of Independence. By July 2nd, 1776, the New Jersey Constitution is finalized and adopted, making New Jersey a self-governing state before America is officially an independent nation. Now let's talk about what makes the New Jersey Constitution a turning point. Sure, there were other state constitutions being written at the time, but New Jersey's is especially groundbreaking. First off, its loose interpretation of who gets to vote is unheard of. It doesn't explicitly restrict suffrage to men. Instead, it allows inhabitants with property to participate, which includes some women and free black people. Of course, this wasn't quite the same as modern democracy. Voting rights were still tied to property ownership, so it wasn't universal suffrage by any means. But for 1776, this is a revolutionary move. It plants the seeds of broader enfranchisement and signals that New Jersey is willing to push the envelope. And as word spreads about this constitution, it sparks curiosity and debate across the colonies. People are asking, if New Jersey can do this, what else could be possible in a free America? Alright, so New Jersey's Constitution of 1776 wasn't perfect, but it set a powerful precedent. By adopting a formal constitution, New Jersey showed other colonies that it was possible to govern independently and put the ideals of the Revolution into practice. This wasn't just a slap in the face to Britain, it was a blueprint for future governance. The Constitution also showed that even in times of crisis, bold ideas could take root. New Jersey's decision to extend voting rights, even temporarily, hinted at the kind of inclusive democracy that would eventually shape the nation. And by including checks and balances, the Constitution reinforced the idea that leaders should be accountable to the people, an idea that would be central to the U.S. Constitution. As other colonies watched New Jersey's experiment, they began to consider similar ideas. Some embraced new forms of government, while others were inspired to expand voting rights or implement systems that gave the people more control. In a way, New Jersey's constitution was a test run for American democracy, a small step that paved the way for big changes. Today, the New Jersey Constitution of 1776 is remembered as a bold first step in the journey toward American independence and self-governance. Sure, it had its flaws, and its radical voting rights didn't last, but it was a daring move that set New Jersey apart. It showed that even a small colony could lead with big ideas and inspired others to follow suit. Looking back, it's easy to see the New Jersey Constitution as an early prototype for the democratic principles we hold today. This document was a declaration that New Jersey, and by extension the American colonies, could think for themselves, make their own laws, and build a government by the people, for the people. And in a time when the idea of self-governance was still a radical notion, New Jersey's Constitution proved that change was possible. So here's the big takeaway. The New Jersey Constitution of 1776 might not be as famous as the Declaration of Independence, but it was a bold move that captured the revolutionary spirit of the time. It's a reminder that sometimes, progress comes from the most unexpected places. In this case, a small colony willing to experiment with big ideas. This story shows us that democracy isn't built in a day. It's a process of trial and error, of bold moves and daring choices. And sometimes, even the ideas that don't last, like New Jersey's early voting rights, are the sparks that ignite bigger conversations about equality and representation. Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive into the New Jersey Constitution of 1776. If you're into these stories of bold beginnings and revolutionary ideas, hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more where this came from, so stay curious and keep exploring the stories that shaped our world.